Good morning and welcome to the joint meeting of the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means and the Senate Committee on Finance. Committee Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Senator Canizaro. Senator Dondero Loop. Senator Goycochea. Senator Harris. Senator Neal. Senator Wynn. Senator Severs-Gansert. Senator Titus. Assemblywoman Anderson. Assemblywoman Backus. Assemblywoman Brown-May. Assemblywoman Dickman. Assemblywoman Gorlow. Assemblyman Hafen. Assemblywoman Howdigee. Assemblywoman Kasama. Assemblyman Miller. Assemblyman O'Neill. Assemblywoman Peters. Assemblyman Watts. Assemblyman Yeager. And Chair Monroe Marino.
And I am here. Will you please mark Senator Harris and Assemblyman Watts absent excused. Committee, we have budget closings today from the Governor's Office and the Treasurer's Office. And we will have public comment at the end of today's hearing. We will start with the Governor's Office. And budget 101-1000. And a few more. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Kathy Crockett, Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. There are 4 Governor's Office budgets to close today. I will be covering the first 3. The first budget is the Office of the Governor. It begins on page 3 of your packet. There are 2 major closing issues in this budget. The first major closing issue relates to new positions. The Governor recommends general funds of $2.7 million over the biennium to add 5 new non-classified positions and associated operating and travel costs for the Office of the Governor. The recommended annual salary of each new position is $200,000. Nevada Revised Statute, NRS 281123, indicates that the annual salary of state employees must not exceed 95% of the salary of the governor unless authorized by specific statute. Pursuant to NRS 223050, the governor's salary is currently $170,062 in each year of the biennium. Therefore, the annual salaries of state employees should not exceed $161,559 per year under current law. To allow for the recommended salary levels in the upcoming biennium, a bill has been submitted to repeal the provisions governing the salary cap. During the budget hearing, the Office of the Governor testified that it has historically been understaffed and underfunded, and additional staff would assist the governor with managing and overseeing state agencies and allow senior staff to focus on strategic planning. The new positions would be cabinet-level secretaries that would provide administrative oversight for state agencies and provide an intermediary layer between senior staff of the office and state agency staff with the goal of improving the operations of state government. Currently, state agencies contact staff in the office for guidance and issue resolution, and staff in the office currently spend the majority of their time addressing urgent issues that arise in state agencies. The new positions, according to the agency, would allow senior staff to dedicate more time to working on the governor's strategic priorities and to be more responsive in serving the people of the state. The office testified that each secretary would have oversight responsibility for a programmatic area of state government. Senate Bill 431, among numerous other provisions, repeals NRS 281123, that is the statutory salary cap, and requires the governor to appoint 5 secretary positions to serve as the members of the governor's cabinet, including a Secretary of Public Safety and Military Affairs, Secretary of Commerce and Administration, Secretary of Energy, Environment, and Public Works, Secretary of Health and Human Services, and Secretary of Education and Workforce. On page 9 of your packet, staff has provided an attachment that lists out the various entities each of the secretary positions would be responsible for overseeing. I will not walk through all of them, but just as an example, the Secretary of Public Safety and Military Affairs would oversee the Department of Corrections, the Department of Sentencing Policy, the Department of Public Safety, the Office of the Military, Peace Officer Standard and Training Commission, serve as a liaison between the Judicial Department and the Office of the Attorney General, as well as oversee various other related boards and commissions. Pursuant to NRS 223085, the governor is permitted to determine the number and salaries of those individuals employed within the limits of money available for that purpose. Therefore, although legislation would be required to allow for the recommended $200,000 annual salary, statutory changes would not be necessary to authorize the addition of the secretary positions for the office. When asked how the recommended $200,000 annual salary was determined to be appropriate, the office indicated positions were envisioned to be at the top of the executive branch of state government with a commensurate salary. The committees requested a comparison between the recommended salary and the salaries of similar positions in other states. In response, the office indicated that a valid comparison could not reasonably be made due to differences in governmental structure. With regard to additional costs related to administrative support, no additional support was requested at this time, but the office did indicate that support may likely be requested in future biennia after ongoing operational needs are evaluated. When asked for the rationale of repealing NRS 281123 to allow for salaries that exceed 95% of the governor's salary, the office had indicated the repeal was sought not only to enable the recommended salary of the secretary positions, but to address statewide salary issues resulting from the existing salary cap, which can create issues with recruitment and retention due to compression of salaries at all levels of government. Staff would also note that the cost of living adjustments recommended by the governor would result in the salaries of some state employees besides these positions exceeding the cap. Therefore, changes to NRS 281123 would be necessary if the committee chooses to approve the recommended cost of living adjustments as recommended by the governor, regardless of the approval of the secretary positions at the recommended salary level. There is a table on page 5 that displays a breakdown of costs in this decision unit, including salaries and fringe benefits, in-state travel, operating equipment, and information services. And as an option for the committee, if you do not wish to approve funding as recommended by the governor for the 5 non-classified secretary positions at $200,000 per year, you could also consider approving funding for 5 positions at a different annual salary or a different number of positions at a salary of the committee's choice. The decision for the committee is to A, approve general funds of $2.7 million over the upcoming biennium to provide funding for 5 new non-classified secretary positions based on an annual salary of $200,000 per position and associated operating and travel costs contingent upon the passage and approval of legislation to repeal NRS 281123. Or B, approve general funds of some other amount for a number of positions at an annual salary of the committee's choice and associated operating and travel costs. Or C, do not approve funding for the new non-classified positions for the office of the governor.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions on what you've just heard? Seeing none? Okay. Senator Gansert, and then we'll come this way.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that overview. I recognize that the funds that have been requested are substantial, but having served in the governor's office, the staff there is all non-classified. So basically they get a bucket of money and then it's up to them to decide how they're going to use it. So what level of employees, how many, and I know it's very difficult for a governor to ask for more money. No one ever wants to do that. And this is a reorg of that office. And what I can tell you is that the bucket of funds that has been available in the past and has continued to be available is just extremely short. That is the office that has to operate the entire executive branch of government and oversee it. And when we're talking about the budget, right, so let's just think about the budget. When we've got an $11 billion budget, we have a staff of, I believe you just said, 11 people who are at the top overseeing everything, and it's very difficult. And then and I know every member here understands this too, whenever we have someone who is at a director of an agency, we have a very difficult time hiring anyone. So think of that level of employee, because we just don't pay enough. We don't compete with the private sector. And so when you have that bucket of funds to be able to hire highly qualified folks to be able to administer the government of the state of Nevada is very difficult to do. It's difficult to hire people because you don't have enough money. It's difficult because you don't have enough people. And I'm talking about the people at the very highest levels, but also you've got to have some researchers and folks. And we used to pay people that were worth $100,000 a year, 10 years ago, $50,000. And they did it because they wanted to work for the governor. But they can only do that so long. And so what you find is a lot of turnover. So again, I know this is a substantial amount of money, and I'm very hopeful this committee considers the bucket that's the amounts that have been provided, or some portion of that, because there are too few folks in the governor's office who were able to help manage, and it's very difficult to hire the high-level personnel that are required to do a great job. And I think also folks don't understand the governor's office. Not only do they run the governor's or the executive branch of government, but every emergency that happens. So if there is a fire, a wildland fire, you have to deal with it. If there is an incident, an accident somewhere, if there's a natural disaster, if there's a flood, constant, having to deal with different things, and the staffing is just really slim to be able to respond to urgent events that affect the citizens of the state while also trying to run the executive branch of government. So I'm very hopeful that this committee will consider funding these positions or a portion thereof if because of those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Kasama, and then we'll go to Assemblywoman Backus.
Thank you, Chair. I just wish to second my colleagues' comments, and also it's for the long term. It's for future, governors and just for the long term outlook for our state too. I would just say that this gives the opportunity for the governor's office to be successful too in their endeavors in representing the state. Thank you.
Assemblywoman Backus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. One thing I can't help is some of these positions, I understand they're pretty much full right now for the governor's office, and understand that a lot of us do this work because it's public service. And I've always struggled with adding this large sum of money personally, but right now I do also understand that there is a bill pending, because we also have some statutory cap issues as well as other issues that have to be addressed. And in light of those pending bills, I would recommend that we would hold off until those bills are fully vetted and heard. And so with that, I would make the motion to not approve the funding at this time for the new non-classified positions for the office of the governor.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus and a second from Senator Dondero Loop. Any discussion on the motion? I believe Senator Neal had a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think, well, my comments are this. Although I have deep respect for some members that serve in the governor's cabinet, I guess I cannot, it's hard for me to allow for someone to make more money than what the governor makes himself. And I feel because he is the one who is elected, and although they serve him, there's a reason statutorily we put that in law, right? Whether or not you want to consider it old, whether or not we want to consider tradition. But there was a purpose for maintaining this particular statute in law. And I support continuing the maintenance of that statute in law. I feel we all come and we serve and we take cuts by putting ourselves on the line to do this work for the state. And what comes first is service of others, not of self, and that you have to figure out how to manage by doing with less, because that's what we do in the legislature. We literally leave our families, get on a super savings plan in order to figure out how to maintain ourselves for 120 days in this building. And none of that is not without pain, none of that is without sacrifice. And it's because we want to serve our constituencies and move the needle for them that we say we'll take the hit, we'll sacrifice, we'll bring ourselves into this building, and we work not just for the 120 days, but year long. We move into our communities to establish and position ourselves, and we're on the phone. And when we're out of this building, we get paid $0 in order to do that work. And it is because we committed ourselves to serve a group of individuals, our constituencies, above and beyond our own needs. And we put our egos to the side in order to serve those constituencies. And that's why I support C.
Thank you. Senator Ganser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I will not be supporting this motion for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. And again, the executive branch, I know when I worked there, it was 24/7 with very few people. And you need to get highly qualified people to be able to work. And it actually say 24/7, 365 days a year. Very difficult office to work within. And I think we'll have to figure out, the bill that's been proposed. The other way to do that is to raise the governor's salary. So you can go one way or the other, make it up to 95%, or we can always consider what we pay our constitutional officers, which we all recognize too is not what they could earn in the private sector as well. And I'm not going to go on about that because we've heard repeatedly from staff and from employees that we need to bump up the pay, and I know that we're all going to be looking at that in the future. But again, I'm not going to support the motion because I think we should be taking some steps forward, and it takes a lot of courage for a governor to ask for more resources because no one who's elected ever wants to do that. And the last thing I'll say is I want to thank everyone on this committee and all the legislators because I know you make tremendous sacrifices of your time, and it affects your personal finances, it affects your families, and especially those who travel up here. And so I'm just grateful to have you as colleagues, and again, appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Members, we're going to take a 1-minute recess. We'll bring the meeting back to order, and we've had conversation on this budget item. Hearing both sides and knowing that there is a bill that will discuss the policy and the merits of that policy, Senate Bill 431, which is right now in Government Affairs on the Senate side. I support the motion that was made by Assemblywoman Backus for C, and we will hold off to hear what happens in that bill hearing. And the motion was seconded by Senator Don Darrell Loop. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Those opposed, please raise your hand. We have Senator Gokachia, Senator Titus, Senator Ganser, Assemblywoman Kasama, Assemblyman Hafen, Assemblywoman Dickman, and Assemblyman O'Neill. The motion passes on the Assembly side. The motion fails on the Senate. Senator Canizero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree that I think there are some additional discussion to be had with respect to the Senate Bill 431 that we have in our Government Affairs Committee for cabinet secretaries and what those duties may be. I know we had that discussion at length, given that we have a lot of department heads and maybe some of those are overlapping and what else the governor's office may need. And so I do think that there should be and will be a more robust discussion about those particular positions within the policy bill. However, for today, I would make a motion for us on the Senate side to approve option B, approve general funds of another specified amount for a number of positions at an annual salary of the committee's choice and associated operating and travel costs. I think within that parameters, I would make a motion to allocate a bucket of money for $600,000 in each year of the biennium for a total of $1.2 million. Obviously, as we've discussed and heard this morning, that money could then be allocated for certain positions within the governor's office, but I think that that would give us the ability to not only have the policy discussion about what might be best, but also to have some of that money set aside for those purposes.
I would say,
There's a motion by Majority Leader Canizero, seconded by Senator Ganser, and I believe there's a comment by Senator Don Darrell Loop. Okay. Assemblywoman Backus, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing I do struggle with the bucket of money, and I kind of thought about this with the $2 million, is these are unclassified positions, and there's no stopping the governor from hiring just 2 people and paying them each $300,000 if we lift the statutory cap. And I echo Senator Neal's comments. These are public positions. When someone serves in the governor's office, anyone would jump to have those jobs, and I just get nervous with them being classified positions in this bucket of money and the unlimited expense of it. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Senator Ganser, before we go to the vote, this will just be a Senate vote.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate that we are going to, the Senate's recommending putting some money into the governor's office. I think it's direly needed, and because the staff is so thin, I have no concerns about what they're going to spend per employer having somebody that has an exorbitant salary, because it just doesn't work that way. But I can understand that question, and I just want to thank the senators for supporting some money for the governor's office at this time, and I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. So those on the Senate, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries on the Senate for item B on this decision unit, and it passed on the Assembly side for item C. Moving on.
Kathy Crockett, Fiscal Analysis Division, for the record. The next major issue in this budget is salary adjustments for existing positions. This is on page 6 of the packet. The governor recommends general funds of $315,000 in each year of the biennium to support salary adjustments for Office of the Governor's staff. During the budget hearing, the office did not provide further information describing how the recommended funding would be applied and indicated adjustments to the decision unit would likely be needed. Fiscal staff worked with the office, and it was determined that funding to achieve these salary adjustments sought by the governor would total $315,031, including general funds of $286,105, and coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds of $28,926 in fiscal year 2024, and $314,168, including general funds of $285,246, and coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds of $28,922 in 2025. The funding would be applied to achieve a net salary increase of $254,000 per year, with the remainder of the funding supporting fringe benefit changes. The salaries would increase for 15 positions, decrease for 8 positions, and remain unchanged for 4 positions, including the governor, in comparison to the base budget salaries. Attachment B on page 9 of your packet. Oh, I'm sorry, that is page 15 of the packet. Displays the salary adjustments recommended by the governor. It is broken down into general funded positions and coronavirus state fiscal recovery funded positions, of which there are 5 in the budget approved by the interim finance committee that are recommended to continue in the upcoming biennium. The table displays the position title, the base budget salary, which is reflective of salaries in the base budget that is a carryover from the prior administration and does not necessarily reflect what individuals are being paid at this time. The proposed salary of for the upcoming biennium, the salary change, and the percentage change. Staff would note that some individuals are currently being paid at the proposed salary level amount. And if the committees wish to approve this decision unit, fiscal staff would recommend technical adjustments to align funding with the previously discussed amounts. Do the committees wish to approve funding for salary adjustments for non-classified staff in the Office of the Governor, inclusive of technical adjustments, funded with $315,031, general funds of $286,105, and coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds of $28,926 in fiscal year 24, and $314,168, including general funds of $285,246, and coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds of $28,922 in fiscal year 2025. And fiscal staff requests authority for technical adjustments relating to closing actions for the coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds item.
Thank you. Members, any discussion? Assemblywoman Hadeke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just have some questions regarding the adjustments that were recommended. I know that this, we didn't get to see this during the previous hearing, how some of the adjustments were going to work. And I know that this could be fluid and they might change. And so I'm not sure if someone can help answer my questions about the adjustments recommended by the governor's office for the positions, the salary positions.
We do have someone from the governor's office here in the room. If you can come up and answer questions for us.
You're both the lucky ones. Thought you were going to send one only. Team effort. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, I just have some questions as I'm going over the salary adjustments that are to be made. I just need you to walk me through how you guys got here, because as I'm looking at them, there's some positions that are taking a significant increase percentage-wise. Some of them are going up over 130%. Some of them are going down over 30%. And so I just need you to walk me through that, why for example, the Southern Nevada director is having a 139% increase to their salary, but then we are decreasing the salary of the constituent services by almost 35%. So walk me through how you guys got to these salary adjustments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ben Kiekefer for the record, through you to Assemblywoman Howdigy.
You can go directly to the member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pleasure to be here. Ben Kiekefer again, serve as Governor Lombardo's Chief of Staff. So a lot of this was built out based on salaries that were offered as as an entire new staff of the governor's office was constructed. And as we did that, we evaluated, who was coming in, their obvious previous experience, what and what their salary need was going to be in order to take the job. And so the positions that are identified are not always commensurate one administration to the next. And the job duties of those positions are not always the same. So it's not really an apples to apples comparison for one position as compared to the next from as you transition administrations.
Follow-up, Madam Chair? Okay, and then so I know that the adjustments, they're done by your office. We have no say in what the adjustments are, but right now with the adjustments that are proposed, like for example, if we take that constituent services position, that base budget salary is $70,000 and the new proposed budget is $54,000, what is that position currently getting paid as of today? Did they already, like you said, the positions changed from administration to administration. So when you were taking into consideration salary requirements, did you guys already offer that $55,000 and that's why you're bringing it down? Or are they currently making $70,000 and you are going to slash their salary by 35%?
No, thank you. Ben Kiekefer again for the record. The budgeted positions that were submitted as a part of GovRec are commensurate with what people are currently getting paid. So there was adequate budget authority to fund these positions for the current fiscal year. So that's what they were funded at now. The adjustment that is included in this enhancement keeps everybody flat from this fiscal year to the next fiscal year.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. And then the vacant position, so there's $64,000 being requested for a vacant position. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to fill that position. You could, in reality, take that $64,000 and then sprinkle it across the already existing positions, correct?
Ben Kiekefer for the record. I think that would be true with any position in the office that becomes vacant. Ultimately, as you know, they're all non-classified positions, within the confines of the existing salary structures of the state, the governor can staff his office as he sees fit. There's no fixed number of positions that are required to be filled within the governor's office.
Assemblywoman Backus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And now understanding that the proposed salaries are the actual salaries that are now being paid for each of these positions, one of my questions is I know the governor has made a recommendation of doing the COLAs, the 10.8.4 COLAs. Is it anticipated that these positions would also fall into that category where they would also receive the COLA enhancement during the biennium?
Thank you, Ben Kiekefer, for the record. As long as it doesn't take anybody above the salary cap, unless that salary cap is lifted, in which case it would, yes.
So essentially, in the executive office of the governor's branch, raises on average would be 22% for the next biennium, and all other state employees will only be getting the 10.8 and then the 4% increase then, if we don't do any other pay bump increases? Ben Kiekefer for the record. Any COLA adjustment would be uniform across state government based on actual salaries from what people are currently being paid. Obviously, the majority, we had several positions that were carried over from the prior administration, but most of these positions are new and were brought in at this level. So it's not an adjustment beyond the standard COLA that would be offered across the state government. And then just one more question. If there was the additional monies for the governor's office allocated, would any of that money be utilized for these existing positions?
Ben Kiekefer for the record. someone would know, and you're speaking about the previous item that was discussed? No, the enhancement request that was previously discussed is related specifically to a build-out of capacity within the governor's office, and it would not be the intent of myself as chief of staff or the administration to use it to increase salaries for existing positions.
I appreciate that.
Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't necessarily have a question, but just wanted to indicate that I am supportive of this decision. I think we've talked a lot about state employees and about being competitive, and we've tried to do right by that. And obviously, that includes folks who work for the governor, which all of us know in interacting with that office that it's a tough job. It's a really tough job. I don't envy the position that you're in, Mr. Keycaffer. There's a lot to manage over there, and it's not just you, it's everyone on this list. So, I think it's not just important for our current governor, but it is important for governors who will be in office long after we leave these chairs to be able to have the ability to hire good people who are there for the right reasons, but also can afford to do those jobs. So for that reason, Madam Chair, I would certainly be supportive and would move to approve this item.
We have a motion. Is there a second on the motion? I have a second from Senator Gansert. Any discussion? And so the motion that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to approve funding for salary adjustments for non-classified staff in the office of the governor, inclusive of the technical adjustments, funded with $315,031 of general funds and $286,105 and coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds of $28,926 in fiscal year 24 and $314,168 of general funds and $285,246 and coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds of $28,922 in fiscal year 25. And it would also authorize our staff to make technical adjustments relating to closing actions for the coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds. Is that your motion?
So moved.
All right. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on.
Kathy Crockett, Fiscal Analysis Division. The next item relates to coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds on page 7. As previously discussed, funding for 5 positions that were approved by the Interim Finance Committee are recommended to continue in the upcoming biennium, along with some database maintenance costs. A technical adjustment to slightly reduce operating costs was identified. As the committees have already considered the salary adjustments in the previous decision unit, the amounts in the following decision are excluding these amounts. Do the committees wish to approve coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds of $594,377 in fiscal year 2024 and $596,163 in fiscal year 2025 to support the base budget costs of 5 positions and database maintenance costs as recommended by the governor, including noted technical adjustment?
Thank you. Members, I'll entertain a motion. Assemblywoman Bacchus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move that the committee approve the coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds of $594,377 in fiscal year 2024 and $596,163 in fiscal year 2025 to support the base budget cost of 5 positions and database maintenance cost as recommended by the governor, and including the noted technical adjustment.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on.
There is one other closing item in this budget. Fiscal staff recommends other closing item 1 be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority for staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Members, I'll entertain a motion. I have a motion from Assemblywoman Heidegge and a second from Assemblywoman Dickman. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to our next budget.
Kathy Crockett, Fiscal Analysis Division. The next budget is Governor's Mansion Maintenance on page 17. There's one major closing issue. The governor recommends general funds of $265,839 over the biennium for maintenance projects at the governor's mansion to maintain, repair, and replace damaged and worn items. There is a table on page 17 that details the projects and the associated costs that were recommended. During the hearing, the committees inquired whether the governor's office anticipated completing all recommended projects in the upcoming biennium, noting that the requested amount was an increase from previously approved amount, and the office did confirm that it expected to be able to complete all the recommended maintenance projects. The committees also asked when prior work was done on each requested project, and that information is displayed in a table on page 18. And the office had indicated that the last major renovation of the governor's mansion occurred during the Gwynn administration, which was in 1999 to 2006. Upon review, it was determined that the costs associated with the replacement of a water line totaling approximately $15,000 were included both in this budget and the Department of Administration Buildings and Grounds budget. Fiscal staff would recommend a technical adjustment to remove funding from this budget and leave the funding within the Buildings and Grounds budget. Do the committees wish to approve general funds of $250,870 over the 23 to 25 biennium for facility maintenance projects at the governor's mansion, inclusive of a technical adjustment to eliminate duplicated costs?
Thank you. Members' questions? Assemblywoman Bacchus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question, and Kathy, I appreciate so much you doing the chart, providing when all of the last upgrades were, because you can see a lot of stuff has not been done in many years. But I just had a question regarding the repair to the exterior wood and repaint. I noticed that was last done in 2018, which was only about, I guess, 5 years ago now, and normally exterior paint can usually last like about up to 10 years. So I didn't know if we had any other information to support why we were going in there just to do that exterior wood and repaint this early, like earlier than a 10-year period that would normally be when it would be done.
I don't have any further detail on that project.
Is there anyone in the audience that could be a phone to friend and answer a question?
Oh, I did just find something in my notes. It notes that there was some weather damage to that item.
Good morning. Daniel Marlowe, Administrator for Department of Administration, Administrative Services Division. This is for a small piece for weather damage, and it's failing on certain parts of the mansion and the stateroom.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. And I just guess I see the prices and I see the cost, but I just want to sort of remind everybody that our governor's mansion is really a Nevada treasure, and it's part of our historical history. And I guess I'm a little sentimental because my parents actually in the late 40s lived behind that house in the cottages when they lived up here. And so I think this is something that truly we need to take care of. And while the prices are high and I wish that we could find cheaper wallpaper, I guess that I feel like we need to not implode what we have in Nevada like we always do and save some of these wonderful old historic buildings. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And with that, members, I will accept a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move to approve the general funds of $250,870 over the 2023-25 biennium for facility maintenance projects at the Governor's Mansion, and also this would include technical adjustments to just eliminate some duplicated costs.
I have a first from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Senator Dondero Loop. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on.
Kathy Crockett, Fiscal Analysis Division. There is one other closing item, and staff recommends it be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much. I'll entertain a motion. I have a first from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Senator Dondero Loop to approve as noted by staff. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next budget is the Governor's Washington office on page 21. Fiscal staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations for this budget. The committees have not previously reviewed the budget. There are no changes recommended, and staff recommends the budget be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority for staff to make further technical adjustments as necessary.
This is an easy one. I have a motion to approve by Woman Hadigi, a second from Senator Dondero Loop. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Good morning.
Ready?
We can start whenever you're ready.
All right. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Colby Nichols. I'm a program analyst with LCB Fiscal Analysis Division, here to go over the final budget on the agenda for the governor's office. That's the Athletic Commission, discussion of which is going to begin on page 23 of your closing packet. This is a staff closure budget, so the committees have not previously reviewed. The Athletic Commission is a self-funded agency responsible for the supervision and regulation of all contests and exhibitions of unarmed combat. There are no major closing issues associated with this account. There are two other closing items. Those are included in the table towards the bottom of page 23. And fiscal staff would recommend this budget be closed as recommended by the governor and request authority to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Members, any discussion? I'll entertain a motion. I have a motion from Assemblywoman Hadigi, a second from Senator Dunn. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're playing musical chairs this morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Brody Leiser, LCB Fiscal. I'll be presenting the closings for the state treasurer's office budgets. There were 4 budgets that were heard on February 10th before the committees, and then there are 4 staff closed budgets. I would note that the bond interest and redemption account, budget account 1082, that will not be closed today. That will be closed with the capital improvement program. The first budget is on page 25 of your closing packet for budget account 1080. There are three major closing issues. The first is for a new classified accountant and new investment analyst position for the investment division of the Treasurer's Office. The accountant position is recommended and would perform account reconciliations and reporting for the investment portfolios. And the investment analyst position would allow the office to bring in more investing duties in-house. The accountant would allow an existing investment analyst position to shift their duties to perform investment portfolio management, issuer selection, credit research tasks, which are duties that are currently being performed by outside firms. And as I mentioned, the new investment analyst position would allow for the office to bring more investing duties in-house for the areas that I mentioned previously. I would note that in the governor's recommended budget, the investment analyst position is an unclassified position. And during the budget hearing, the treasurer's office had indicated that that unclassified position was related to a companion request to reclassify three existing investment analyst positions from the classified service to the unclassified service. However, that request is not moving forward. In other words, the treasurer's office, and I'll talk a little bit more in detail about this here in a minute, but they're no longer requesting that the investment analyst be an unclassified position and rather still are requesting the position, but in the classified service. There's some information on page 26 of your closing packet, just some follow-up information from the budget hearing. During the budget hearing, the treasurer had indicated that since he had been in office, the investment portfolio had grown from $2.8 billion to $9.2 billion. However, no additional staffing resources have been added to the division over that time. With regards to the accountant position, the treasurer's office had testified they're trying to move the investment division away from historic accounting functions to focus on how to grow and improve the state's investments. And right now, the division has the same staff performing investment functions and reconciliation functions. And this new accountant would allow for some separation of duties. I would note, you'll see with each of the new positions recommended in this budget, if they are approved, we have minor technical adjustments just based on the funding sources for the position. So I won't go through those in detail for each position, but just sort of note them here and you'll see those as we move throughout this budget. As I mentioned, the treasurer's office with regard to the investment analyst is no longer pursuing the reclassification of the three existing investment analysts. Did confirm that the new investment analyst position recommended in decision unit E128 was still needed. However, would like to revise that new position recommendation to a classified investment analyst 3 position. With that change, there was just a slight difference in the costs over the biennium of less than $1,000. So the decision points for the committees on page 27 are: do the committees wish to approve one, funding of $184,941, including general funds of $13,362 over the 2023-25 biennium to support the addition of one new accountant position for the investment division as recommended by the governor in decision unit E127, and including the technical adjustment to correct the funding mix for the position. And 2, funding of $269,910, including general funds of $14,766 over the 2023-25 biennium to support the addition of one new classified investment analyst 3 position for the investment division as requested by the treasurer's office instead of the unclassified investment analyst position originally recommended by the governor in decision unit E128 and including technical adjustment to correct the funding mix for the position.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Hadigay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to approve 1 and 2 as read by fiscal staff.
Thank you, members. We have a first and a second on the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next major closing issue is for a new accountant technician position. This position would provide support with increasing electronic fund transactions. The position would be for the cash management division and would assist state agencies with claims and reconciling of transactions, assist with initially the position's justification also included information that this position would provide with oversight of the transition to the state's new financial system. That's the Smart 21 project. On top of page 28, during the budget hearing on February 10th, the Treasurer's Office had testified that electronic banking transactions have increased by 23% since 2019, which represents an additional 1.4 million transactions on an annual basis. However, no additional staffing resources have been added over that time. And I would note that while the initial justification for the position made reference and indicated that the position would assist with the Smart 21 project, the Treasurer's Office did clarify through testimony at the budget hearing that regardless of how or when that project may move forward, that this position is needed due to the increase in workload being experienced by the office. So the decision point here for the committees on page 28 is, do the committees wish to approve $139,628, including general funds of $13,618 over the 2023 biennium to support the addition of a new accountant technician position for the cash management division as recommended by the governor and including the technical adjustment to correct the funding mix for the position.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Hadigay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to approve GovRec as read by staff.
We have a first from Assemblywoman Hadigay, a second from Senator Dunn-Duraloop. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Say nay. Seeing none, motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The third major closing issue is a request by the Treasurer's Office for additional travel and training authority. The Treasurer's Office had submitted a budget amendment request to the Governor's Finance Office. However, that budget amendment request was not approved. This travel and training would allow for continued professional development, professional networking, additional travel between Las Vegas and Carson City for office staff, including travel that will be necessary during the 2025 legislative session. This item was not presented during the budget hearing, but as I mentioned, the Treasurer's Office has submitted this request. In the request, there's a table on the top of page 29 of your closing packet that shows the difference between the travel and training in the governor's recommended budget alongside with the request from the Treasurer's Office and what the total for each of those categories would be. If approved, this request would add general fund appropriations of $29,350 in fiscal year 2024 and $44,147 in fiscal year 2025. There's on page 29 the details of what's included in the travel request and the training request. This would include attendance and travel for items such as the National Association of State Treasurers, training and conference, a National Institute of Public Finance conference, Nevada Association of Counties annual conference, as I mentioned, trips to Carson City from Las Vegas, Government Investment Officers Association conference in Las Vegas, and again, allow for travel that will be needed during the 2025 legislative session. Training would allow for the Chief of Staff to attend a training conference held by the National Institute of Public Finance. So the decision point for the committees is at the bottom of page 29. Do the committees wish to approve additional general fund appropriations of $29,350 in fiscal year 2024 and $44,147 in fiscal year 25 to support increased levels of out-of-state and in-state travel and training as requested by the Treasurer's Office?
Assemblywoman Backus?
I would move to approve this decision as stated by fiscal staff.
We have a motion and a second. Second from Senator Dondero Loop. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brody Leiser for the record. Page 30 includes the other closing items. I would note that there's just one technical adjustment to the base budget to align contract expenditures. Fiscal staff would recommend other closing items 1 through 3 be closed as recommended by the governor. Other closing item 4 be closed with the noted technical adjustments to align contractual expenditures and request authority for staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much. Assemblywoman Backus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move to approve what fiscal staff has recommended for this other closing items.
It's been moved and second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to budget 1092, excuse me.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. There's 4 major closing issues in this budget. The first is recommendation for a new unclassified Deputy Treasurer of Financial Literacy and Security. The new position, the new deputy position, would be funded with $270,813 in funds transferred from the College Savings Endowment Account over the 2023 to 25 biennium. Senate Bill 188 during the last legislative session approved and expanded treasurer's permissive appointees to include this new deputy position. And the position, if approved, would lead the creation and implementation of an individual development account program and work on the Nevada Statewide Council on Financial Independence Council, both of which were also approved last legislative session through the passage and approval of Senate Bill 188. While statutorily authorized, the council nor the individual development account program have been implemented at this time, which again would be the intent of this new position, would be to get those programs up and running. The individual development account program allows certain persons from low-income households to establish an individual development account into which a person deposits money to save and use for certain purposes. And the Nevada Statewide Council on Financial Independence is responsible or would be responsible for developing statewide priorities and strategies for helping individuals who receive public assistance or social services to increase their financial independence, and with overseeing the individual development account program. The new deputy position would oversee the day-to-day administration of the council, the individual development account program. The position would also oversee the Nevada Achieving a Better Life Experience Savings Program, also known as the Nevada ABLE Program, and other financial literacy and security initiatives. During the budget hearing on February 10th, there was discussion about the timeline to get the council up and running if this position were approved. The Treasurer's Office had indicated that the intent would be to hire the position right around as close to the October 1st start date as possible. From there, the position would work to identify and implement the necessary pieces for the individual development account program and council, roughly in the early calendar year of 2024. The office would need to identify and appoint the 5 council members that are appointed by the state treasurer pursuant to NRS 422A.478. Initially, the council would establish its bylaws and work on initial statewide priorities and strategies. The new deputy position would research best practices with other states that administer individual development account programs to align and design the program with the council objectives and priorities. And the state would need to go out for an RFP for contract services with a vendor for the management and investment work related with the individual development accounts. Best case scenario, the treasurer testified that possibly all of that could be done within a 6-month period, but felt that within the 12 months of the position's hire that the council would be up and running. There was also discussion around how this council would differ from the State Financial Literacy Council. The Treasurer's Office had testified that the new council would focus on financial stability and independence to ensure individuals can protect their assets and be prepared for financial periods of instability. The new council would need to work in collaboration with other stakeholders that do focus on financial literacy and would ensure that there's minimal to no overlap with those stakeholders. As I mentioned, the new deputy position would be funded through transfers from the College Savings Endowment Account. Pursuant to NRS 353B.350, the money in the College Savings Endowment Account has very specific purposes, mostly relating to college savings and scholarship programs, as identified there at the bottom of page 34 of your closing packet. However, one of the provisions does allow for these funds to be used for the costs of providing programs for financial education to Nevada residents. However, under that provision, the use of the funds for financial education are capped at 3% of the money received in the account during the first fiscal year of the immediately preceding biennium. Following the hearing, we worked with the Treasurer's Office to confirm that the new deputy position would fall under that provision to provide financial education, and that under the existing statutory cap, there would not be sufficient funds to support the new position without a statutory change. So the Treasurer's Office has requested a statutory change in order for this position to be funded. Specifically, the request would be to amend NRS 353B.530 subsection 5E to specify that the costs for providing financial education include the administration of financial education programs, the costs for employing the Deputy of Financial Literacy and Security, and the costs of carrying out the Nevada Able Savings Program. Additionally, the requested language would raise the cap from 3% to 10%. There's not currently a bill to facilitate the necessary statutory changes. Therefore, a committee bill drafts request introduction or an amendment to an existing bill would be required. The decision point for the committees on page 35, do the committees wish to approve the addition of a new unclassified deputy treasurer of financial literacy and security position funded with $270,813 in funds transferred from the College Savings Endowment Account over the 2023 to 25 biennium as recommended by the governor and contingent upon passage and approval of enabling legislation? If so, the committee should request for enabling legislation to be drafted to facilitate the request.
Thank you so much. Assemblywoman Bacchus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation. I don't want to put you fully on the spot, but obviously this statutory 3% cap was obviously put in place with a specific purpose historically, and so understanding that and taking a look at the first year of the last biennium and the revenues in that account, it appears to be about $3.3 million. Am I understanding that correctly?
For the record, Brody Leiser, as I fumble through my paper. I believe the revenue, I'm going to give an approximate number, just because I have the 10% cap number, so it's easy to back into. But the revenue was approximately about $6 million, just under $6 million. And so the 3% cap that's calculated for the upcoming biennium is just under $180,000. There's a dedicated expenditure category in this budget that ties to the 3% cap. And right now, that amount is budgeted at just over $130,000. And so that's where, with the current cap at about 180,000, with the budgeted expenditure category under that dedicated for this purpose, for financial education, that's why the cap would not provide sufficient authority. And I sort of fumbled through that, so if that was not clear, I'm happy to try and clarify.
Madam Chair, may I have a follow-up? I do believe it was completely clear to me. What I was looking at is jumping, obviously there's not a BDR in place at this point, and so looking for the jump from 3% to 10%, I was trying to eyeball to see if we could look at something lower, because obviously there was some probably public policy reason of that lower cap. With that, I don't know if you, Chair would entertain a motion. I would go ahead and move that the committee approve the addition of a new unclassified deputy treasurer of financial literacy and security position funded with $270,813 in funds transferred from the College Savings Endowment account over the next biennium, as recommended by the governor. Obviously, this would be contingent upon passage and approval of enabling legislation. And I guess I would also move that the committee request such enabling legislation to draft such request.
Thank you for the motion. A second? I have a second from Senator Dondero Loop. Any discussion on the motion? Senator Gansert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm supportive of the positions and a potential increase, statutory increase of the percentage that can be used, but I actually just think 10% is too high, so going from 3 to 10 is a pretty big jump, especially when you look at a pool of funds and potentially what you can earn on that versus the spend on it. So that would be the only comment that I have, is that if we were to recommend a bill draft, that we consider what that cap should be. Thank you.
Mr. Leiser, I have a question for you. With the expenditures in this decision unit, how much would we need to increase the cap to cover those expenditures? Right now, it's at 3%, and
With, for the record, Brody Leiser, looking at the second year of the biennium, with the full salary of the position across the 12 months of the second year, those total costs are about $151,000. With the dedicated expenditure category that I mentioned earlier, at about $131,000. Those combined would be approximately $282,000. Each, at this point, the calculation for each percent is right around $60,000. So I believe that with those two considerations, possibly 5% may be sufficient. However, we probably would need to work with the treasurer's office and make sure that there's not additional costs within the budget that are being funded under this specific purpose. So there's a couple decision points later on in this closing document that would also use these same funds for the same purpose. But to answer the question of what it would be for that dedicated expenditure category and this deputy position, I believe a 5% cap would be right around the mark. With the additional decision points that have yet to be made, and potentially if there are other costs in other categories, whether it's 5% or 7%, I think, we certainly would be willing to work with the treasurer's office to identify what that cap would need to be to sufficiently cover budgeted expenditures based on decisions that are made by the money committees.
Thank you for that clarification. So knowing that there's other items that may come from this funding source, I think I would request permission to add to that motion that was given, if I get permission from the first and the second, to give our staff authority to work with legal and the division to determine what the correct percentage amount should be as we address the other items in this budget. Senator Gansert?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for a second time. So I agree with that. Reviewing what it could be, in my mind, going from 3% to 5% makes some sense. And then I think we should consider general funds if we need to. But I really think it's important that we don't bump up that cap too much. Thank you.
Yeah.
With that, I'd be happy to withdraw my initial motion, and I'd be happy to make a new motion. I don't know if someone seconded.
Go
The
ahead.
second may have to withdraw.
I withdraw the second.
Thank you so much. With that, I would move that we have our fiscal staff work with the treasurer's office in ascertaining what the appropriate statutory cap could be to fund this position. And I think that's it. Oh, and any other decisions that we approve today, so that we just don't go ahead and put enabling legislation that increases the cap automatically to the 10%. And I would also move that we go ahead and fund the position being recommended by the governor for this new unclassified deputy treasurer of financial literacy and security position, funded with $270,813 and the funds transferred under the college savings endowment account.
We have a new motion and a second.
Second?
All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the next item.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. The next major closing issue is a recommendation for a new program officer position to support the Nevada College Savings Program. This position is recommended to be funded with $146,775 in funds transferred from the College Savings Endowment Account. This position would work to increase enrollment in higher education resource programs, such as the College Kickstart Program, the 529 savings accounts, a prepaid tuition program, and the Governor Gwynn Millennium and Memorial Scholarship programs. The position would lead outreach initiatives through partnerships with higher education institutions, schools and school districts, community groups, organizations, and work to provide additional capacity and support for K-12 students that are preparing for higher education. The position justification also did indicate that the Nevada College Kickstart Program, that the first cohort of students for that program will graduate from high school in 2025, and this position would help to provide outreach and education campaigns and initiatives to ensure that the students are receiving benefits from the program. The position would also just provide a direct resource for communication with the community and individuals to ensure all available resources are known and to aid individuals with taking advantage of those resources. So the decision points on page 36 of your closing packet. Do the committees wish to approve the addition of a new program officer position funded with $146,775 in funds transferred from the College Savings Endowment Account over the 2023 to 25 biennium to support the Nevada College Savings Program as recommended by the governor?
Assemblywoman Backus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm trying to work through each of these new positions that the Treasurer's Office is requesting, because it seems like some of them may overlap, or that I'm not sure if we could just maybe do one of the two that are coming up. I know on page 36 to 37, it's looking for a new position to deal with the ABLE Savings Program. And so I wasn't sure if, and you may not know, and we may need to have the treasurer office come up to explain maybe why there is this need for the two. And then looking at this, I know we didn't have the information, but I'm taking it on this decision point. Does this also impact that 3% cap, or is this a different position that would fall outside of that 3% cap because there's the transfer from the College Savings Endowment Account?
For the record, Brody Lizer, through you, Madam Chair, to Assemblywoman Backus, this position would not fall under the 3% cap. That is specific for purposes of general financial education for residents. This position's role with the College Savings Program would fall under other allowable uses under that statute. Madam Chair, I'm happy to discuss major closing issue 3 now, if you would like.
I think that would be good.
Okay. So the third major closing issue that was just referenced is also for a new program officer position. This position would be specific for efforts relating to the Nevada Achieving a Better Life Experience Savings Program, Nevada ABLE Savings Program. The governor recommends $124,893 in funds transferred from the College Savings Endowment Account over the upcoming biennium to support this position. This position would serve as a liaison between agency partners to build relationships and assist school districts, community groups, nonprofit organizations, and other state agencies to increase awareness about the Nevada ABLE Savings Program. The Nevada ABLE Savings Program allows eligible Nevadans with disabilities to create special savings account for expenses aimed at making their lives easier and without the risk of losing state and federal benefit program assistance. During the budget hearing, the Treasurer's Office did testify that since it took over the Nevada ABLE Savings Program, the program had increased from 237 accounts to 3,173 accounts, and that the new position would allow for continued expansion and administration of the program, and that while the increase in the number of accounts also necessitates the need to have resources available to help ensure that recipients are utilizing those accounts as a vehicle to their benefit and for which they are intended. So I'll try and address, I think, the question that was posed in terms of the difference between this program officer and the program officer in the prior closing issues, that this program officer position in the E127 decision unit is intended to specifically focus on the Nevada ABLE Savings Program, whereas the position under decision unit E125, the intent would be for that position to solely focus on the Nevada College Savings Program. Going back to E127, the program officer for the Nevada ABLE Savings Program, this position, similar to the deputy position, is recommended to be funded under that provision of 353B.530. For financial education programs for Nevada residents. And the same issue applies, so I won't go through it again in detail, but this position, in order to fund this position as recommended with the funding source, would require a statutory change, which, as I mentioned, the Treasurer's Office has submitted a language to amend 353 that would allow for this position to be funded as well with those statutory changes. So, Madam Chair, I'm happy to go over the decision points for each. I believe maybe if I understood Assemblywoman Backus's question, I tried to explain the difference between the two, whether or not either position could perform both duties. That probably would defer to the Treasurer's Office to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Leiser, and I'd ask someone from the Treasurer's Office to come up and address that if possible. The two positions, the new program officers positions for the Nevada Achieving a Better Life experience and the Nevada College Savings Program. Why the two positions? Are they doing duplicate work? Why do we need to?
For the record, Lori Hoover, Chief Deputy with the Treasurer's Office. Thank you for the question. Excuse me. For the first program officer under the College Savings Program, the current program officer currently has been doing a little bit more outreach as much as possible. He's been going out to rural areas, having meetings with them, meeting outside of Las Vegas, and that has been received quite well. They've been he and another individual has been asked to come back several times to go out to those rurals and to increase the outreach. And that type of work is time-consuming, quite honestly, because they're out of the office, they're going out and meeting with people. And we are trying to increase that outreach as much as possible, especially when we are being asked to come back. And so we have, in fact, some of the travel that we had asked for or are asking for is to increase some of that rural travel to the counties to increase this outreach. In addition, the ABLE position under E-127 is a completely different program, and we're looking at somebody who can specifically address the increasing needs for that program. Those accounts have increased, number of accounts. There's more people interested in it. Again, a slightly different communication to different groups of people, and so we're trying to encourage that. And by doing so, we are looking for two different people to be able to handle those different responsibilities and requirements.
Thank you so much for that answer. And I have a question. We just approved the unclassified deputy treasurer's position, and part of that responsibility is the financial literacy and these other programs. Do we need the deputy and both of those positions, or is the deputy going to be doing the same work or just overseeing those two new positions?
For the record, Lori Hoover, Chief Deputy with the Treasurer's Office. Thank you for that question. Our intention for the deputy is, I apologize, but I don't have these responsibilities all memorized. But they're going to be looking at working with the council, setting up the council, which is slightly different, and actually being involved in the process of the individual development program and council. And some of the and the responsibilities around that. I'm not using this as an excuse, but I just want to say I've been with the Treasurer's Office since January. But one of the things I've learned is that the Treasurer's Office is out there trying to educate people and different groups of individuals for financial literacy and education and trying to encourage that ability. And so it becomes somewhat difficult when there are so many different paths we could go down. And so we are looking to cover as many as we can. So I would say, yes, we still need those positions because we are looking to reach out to as many constituents as possible in the different areas that we cover with outreach and education.
Thank you so much. I see that we have Treasurer Conine in our Southern Nevada office, if you'd like to say something.
Chair, and thanks for the moment. This is Treasurer Conine for the record. Just to differentiate between the different positions here, the ABLE program is the thing that allowed us to stand up TOTS in the middle of the pandemic, and that work was completely done on nights and weekends by volunteers, specifically Deputy Policy Director Jimenez and myself and a few others who stepped in to try and do the work of a position that had never been funded. And so that's, that program officer is focused on making sure that individuals, families with disabilities can use a program set up by the federal government that has brought and can bring millions of dollars both into the state and make sure that those families don't lose vital assistance when they go out and do things like get a job or start a business. You might remember our first intern in the treasurer's office, Jack. And Jack started a popcorn company, which I think many of you have had the pleasure of trying because it sure is delicious. Well, it's probably a little too early for popcorn. Anywho, Jack is only able to start that business because of an ABLE account. He only knew about the ABLE accounts because of our office and the volunteer work that we've done so far. The program officer would be able to talk to those families, as opposed to the deputy position, which is focused on creating tools so that those families have a better life going forward. Now, that is completely separate from the work we do on the college savings front, other than they're all about investments in Nevadans. I appreciate the work that the committee has done this morning and the approvals of the positions. The reason why there's so many positions coming out of the Treasury this time around is because we are doing more work than we have ever done before for the citizens of Nevada, and frankly, we just need the help. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Members, any other questions? See none, then I will accept a motion on both decision units as listed on page 36 and 37 of our packets. Assembly. I have a first and a second on the motion. And any discussion? I think we've had enough. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion's carry for both decision units on page 36 and 37 is our packet as stated by our fiscal staff. Moving on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brody Leiser, again, for the record. The fourth major closing issue is additional travel requested by the Treasurer's Office. So this is similar to the item in the first budget. And the Treasurer's Office had submitted a budget amendment requesting additional travel through the Governor's Finance Office. However, that was not approved. This request in this budget would increase, provide travel funded through transfers from the College Savings Endowment Account, and increased travel. Again, there's a table at the top of page 38 showing the Governor's recommended budget, the additional travel request, and would increase transfers from the endowment account by $9,496 in fiscal year 2024 and $9,418 in fiscal year 2025. However, the out-of-state travel items that are requested for attendance at the National Association of State Treasurers annual conference, the conference that's scheduled for this fall, which will be fiscal year 2024, will be in Las Vegas. So if this request were considered, fiscal staff would recommend an adjustment to remove the out-of-state travel by $2,470 in fiscal year 2024 only. And then the in-state travel costs that are requested here would provide funding for various positions in Treasurer's Office budget accounts to organize and carry out the annual Women in Money Financial Empowerment Summit that's hosted by the Treasurer's Office. That summit provides sessions on leadership, financial planning, and investing, entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship, grant writing, saving for college and retirement. Additionally, the in-state travel would allow for travel to rural counties for work associated with the College Savings Division. I would note that there's policy established in the state administrative manual that specifies all travel expenses of state employees should be charged to the budget account specifically appropriated or authorized to provide for the employee's salary. And as I noted, the in-state travel related to the Women in Money Financial Empowerment Summit would include costs for positions that are funded in the state treasurer, the higher education tuition administration, and the Millennium Scholarship Administration budgets. So if the committees were to approve this additional in-state travel request, they may wish to direct fiscal staff to work with the treasurer's office to make technical adjustments to budget for that additional travel within the various budgets for which the associated position salaries are budgeted in alignment with the state administrative manual policy. So on page 39 are the decision points for consideration by the committees. 1, do the committees wish to approve additional transfers from the College Savings Endowment account of $9,496 in fiscal year 2024 and $9,418 in fiscal year 2025 to support increased levels of out-of-state and in-state travel and trainings as requested by the Treasurer's Office? Or number 2, do the committees wish to approve additional transfers from the College Savings Endowment account of $7,026 in fiscal year 24, $9,418 in fiscal year 2025 to support increased levels of travel as requested by the Treasurer's Office, which removes the requested out-of-state travel in fiscal year 2024 since the conference identified will be held in Las Vegas? Or 3, do the committees wish to not approve the Treasurer's Office request for additional transfers from the College Savings Endowment account to support additional travel expenditures? And if options 1 or 2 are approved, do the committees wish to direct fiscal staff to work with the Treasurer's Office to make technical adjustments to budget for the additional travel within the various budgets for which the associated position salaries are budgeted in alignment with the state administrative manual policy?
Thank you so much for that overview, Assemblywoman Backus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would go ahead and move to approve additional transfers from the College Savings Endowment account of $7,026 in fiscal year 2024 and $9,418 in fiscal year 2025 to support increased levels of travel as requested by the Treasurer's Office, which removes the requested out-of-state travel in fiscal year 2024 since the conference identified will be held in Las Vegas. And also, since that is option number 2, I would also move to direct fiscal counsel to work with the Treasurer's Office to make technical adjustments to the budget for the additional travel within the various budgets for which the associated position salaries are budgeted in alignment with the state administrative manual policy.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's one other closing item. Fiscal staff would recommend the other closing item be closed as recommended by the governor and request authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary.
I have a first from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Senator Don Darrell Loop. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, for the record, Brody Leiser. The next budget is the higher education tuition administration budget. The major closing issue here is a new program officer position. This position would be is recommended to be funded with $145,625 over the biennium with funds transferred from the College Savings Endowment account. This position would provide education and outreach to Nevada communities with a specific focus on increasing enrollment in the prepaid tuition program. and also to assist families with saving and paying for higher education costs. The prepaid tuition program allows parents, grandparents, and other family members to lock in future in-state college registration rates at today's prices through tax advantage savings accounts. And I will note this, and I will say it was not requested, but the open enrollment period is going on now and through April 15th, I believe. So we'll just put that on the record. The program does currently operate with 3 staff members. The program officer position would lead outreach initiatives with program partners, including higher education institutions, schools and school districts, community groups and nonprofit organizations, and leverage and align stakeholders with the benefits of the prepaid tuition program. The Treasurer's Office did testify during the budget hearing there are approximately 11,000 active prepaid tuition accounts. The decision point here for the committee is on page 42, and that's, do the committees wish to approve the addition of a new program officer position funded with $145,625 in funds transferred from the College Savings Endowment Account over the 2023 to 25 biennium to support the prepaid tuition program.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Assemblywoman Bacchus.
I would so move as fiscal staff provided the decision for this item.
Thank you. I have a first from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Senator Dondero Loop. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Moving on to our next item in this budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Page 42 are the other closing items. There is a technical adjustment in this budget to align contract expenditures. The fiscal staff would recommend other closing item 1 be closed as recommended by the governor. Other closing item 2 be closed with a noted technical adjustment to account for contractual obligations, and request authority for staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you.
I so move as recommended.
First from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Senator Dondero Loop. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to our next budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget is unclaimed property, budget account 3815. The major closing issue in this budget is a recommendation for a new administrative assistant position. The governor's recommended budget includes funding for a new administrative assistant position funded with $116,982 with transfers from the abandoned property trust account over the biennium. The new position would support the unclaimed property division in reviewing and processing claims to return money to its rightful owners, and that the position's needed due to an increase in claim requests resulting from an increase in the promotion of the unclaimed property program. In fiscal year 2022, there were just over 37,000 claims that were paid, returning over $42 million to rightful owners. Pursuant to NRS 120A.640, the unclaimed property division has 90 days after a claim is filed to allow or deny the claim and provide written notice of the decision to the claimant. The Treasurer's Office did testify during the budget hearing that they are processing claims within that 90-day statutory requirement. While the governor's recommended budget includes an administrative assistant position, the Treasurer's Office has testified during the budget hearing was requesting a new classification for a claims officer position, in that the claims processing requires staff to analyze legal and business documents such as probate orders, trusts, wills, business and corporation documents, tax returns, tax liens, and that due to the complexity of the work, they are seeking to establish a new claims officer class. Again, during the budget hearing on February 10th, the Treasurer's Office indicated they would be working with the Department of Administration, Division of Human Resource Management to propose a new class series based on the duties of this new position and also based on the duties of 2 existing Administrative Assistant 3 positions. So in conjunction with the request for the new position under the new classification, the Treasurer's Office, as testified during the budget hearing, would look to reclassify those 2 existing Administrative Assistant 3 positions to the new class series if it's approved by the Division of Human Resource Management. During the budget hearing, the office again reiterated the justification for the additional position as a result of increase in claim requests as a direct result of increased messaging on the program to get property returned to its rightful owners. In part, during the testimony, the Treasurer's Office credited that increase to a change that was authorized through the passage and approval of Senate Bill 71 from the 2021 legislative session, which allowed claims to be initiated and payments delivered to property owners without the owner filing a claim in certain circumstances. So specifically, that provision was utilized and allowed the office to compare a list of individuals who had filed for unemployment with a list of individuals who had unclaimed property and had identified about $10 million in unclaimed property and initiate payments for those individuals. The office does anticipate a continuation of the increased workload experienced within the unclaimed property claims team over the upcoming biennium. The bottom of page 46 is identification of 2 items to consider, which I'll go through and are summarized even more on page 47. But the first option would be to approve the governor's recommendation to fund a new Administrative Assistant 3 position, which is a grade 27 position. Or the second option would be to approve a new position at a grade 30, which is commensurate with the new claims officer class series that was requested by the Treasurer's Office. To maintain parity with existing staff, if this option is chosen, the committees may also consider reclassifying the 2 existing Administrative Assistant 3 positions to the new Claims Officer 1 level in the requested new class series. Based on calculations, fiscal staff would estimate that additional funding of approximately $49,000 over the biennium would be needed to support the new and existing positions at the grade level 30, commensurate with the new class series that is referenced in the decision unit description. So, Madam Chair, members of the committees, on page 47 are the 2 decision points that I just indicated. The first would be to transfer $116,982 from the Abandoned Property Trust account over the 2023 to 25 biennium for a new Administrative Assistant 3, grade 27 position as recommended by the governor, or the transfer of $166,331 from the Abandoned Property Trust account over the 2023 to 25 biennium for a new Claims Officer 1, grade 30 position, and to reclassify 2 existing Administrative Assistant 3 positions, grade 27s, to Claims Officer 1, grade 30 positions, dependent upon approval by the Department of Administration, Division of Human Resource Management, to establish the new Claims Officer class series.
Thank you. Senator Dondero Loop.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I would move to approve the transfers of $166,331 from the Abandoned Property Trust account over the 23-25 biennium for a new Claims Officer 1 position and to reclassify 2 existing Administrative Assistant 3 positions to Claims Officer 1 positions, dependent upon approval by the Department of Administration, Division of Human Resource Management, to establish the new Claims Officer class series. Thank you.
Thank you for the motion. A second? Second. I have a second from Assemblywoman Backus. Any discussion on the motion? Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was in the bathroom. But I'm wondering if this new position, so how does it, I should have asked this, but how does it correlate to AB 55? Because in AB 55, the unclaimed property will then be able to get confidential information from state agencies and local agencies for unclaimed property purposes. Will they be performing this work?
I think we'll need to go to the treasurer for that. Treasurer Conine, can you answer that question?
Treasurer Conan, for the record, thanks for the question, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about the great work we do in unclaimed property. So over the last couple of years, there's been a few bills and efforts in order to try and return more property to Nevadans. AB 55, as you mentioned, Senator, is exactly that. It allows us to get information from other state agencies that are making payments to Nevadans in order to try and return more property. And so these claims agents will be working in that process, but also just in the process of every day folks come to our office and try to get their money back, and we want to return as much as possible. To wit, we've returned $195 million over the last 5 years, which is a record for any 7-year period. We've also had 140% more claims this year than last year, which had more than 100% claims growth over the year before. So we're just dealing with more volume, but in addition, claims are becoming a little bit harder, right? We have more attempts at fraud. We have more attempts at identity theft. We have more, unfortunately, issues between different family members fighting over different things. And so those claims all take a little bit more time. And this claims processor would allow us to make sure that we are getting money out the door both safely and quickly.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You are welcome. Members, any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Moving on to the last decision union in this budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The other closing items are on page 47. Fiscal staff recommends all other closing items be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority to make technical adjustments as necessary.
I have a motion from Senator Dondera-Loop, a second from Assemblywoman Backus. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to our next budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Brody Leiser. The next 4 budgets are staff closed budgets, and so I will note a couple things with these 4 budgets, and then similar with the other closings that have occurred to date, we've got a summary sheet at the end, so to facilitate a single motion for the approval of these staff closed budgets. The first is on page 49, the municipal bond bank revenue. Both this budget and the next budget, the municipal bond bank debt service. I would just note here the other closing item is a request to continue language in the General Authorizations Act. This is not new language. This is language that has been approved for at least the last couple biennia that allows work program revisions to be requested through and approved by the governor's finance office relating to debt service without having to go through the IFC for approval. And that is, again, specific to debt service repayment costs for bonds. So that's noted in both on page 49 and on page 51. The third staff closed budget, there's no major closing issues, no other closing items for the endowment account. On page 55 is the Millennium Scholarship Administration budget account 1088. There is one other closing item, and I would just take a moment here to provide some brief information, which starts on page 56, relating to the Millennium Scholarship. Since the Millennium Scholarship Fund itself is not part of the executive budget, we've provided information here that the committee does not need to take action on, but provides an update on the projections for the Millennium Scholarship. And so there's a table on page 57 that shows the Millennium Scholarship Fund analysis that's based on information provided by the Treasurer's Office and the Nevada System of Higher Education, based on projections for the Millennium Scholarship. And what I would note is if no additional funding is approved for the Millennium Scholarship Program, the fund would become insolvent during fiscal year 2025 based on projections. As you all are probably aware, there's a one-time appropriation in the governor's recommended budget of $75 million to support the Millennium Scholarship Fund. If that were approved as recommended by the governor, that would provide funding and support the Millennium Scholarship Fund through fiscal year 2027, as reflected on the table on page 57. So you could see the $75 million recommended amount in the projected fiscal year 2023 column on that table. So again, just want to provide this information for the committee members. That one-time appropriation will come through as a bill at some point, and there will be a bill hearing to discuss that when it's introduced. I shouldn't assume. My guess is that it will have a hearing once it gets introduced, but the bill has not been introduced yet, so additional discussion could occur when the bill is introduced and heard. So on page 59, is a summary of the closing decision for the committees, and fiscal staff would recommend that the following budgets be closed as recommended by the governor and request authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary. Budget account 745-1086, Treasurer Municipal Bond Bank Revenue, including approval of inclusion of language in the Authorizations Act as noted under the other closing item. Budget 395-1087, Treasurer Municipal Bond Bank Debt Service, including approval of inclusion of language in the Authorizations Act as noted under the other closing item. 101-1094, the Treasurer Endowment Account, and 261-1088, Treasurer Millennium Scholarship Administration.
Thank you, Mr. Leiser, for going over the staff closed budgets. Senator Dondero Loop.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I would move to approve fiscal staff that the following budgets be closed as recommended by the governor and request authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary for 745-1086, 395-1087, 101-1094, and 261-1088. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a first from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? See none. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much. Members, that brings us up, that was our last budget for the day. So that brings us to the last item on our agenda, and that is public comment. If you have been following us and you'd like to call in for public comment, that number is 888-475-4499. Our meeting ID is 896-391-5199, and then please press pound. Is there anyone here in Carson City that would like to make public comment? I invite you to the table. Seeing none, is there anyone in Las Vegas that would like to make public comment? Go ahead.
Chair, this is Zach Conine, your treasurer. Just wanted to say thank you and encourage all members of the committee to go to claimitnevada.org to check for your unclaimed property. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. BPS, do we have anyone joining us on the phone lines that would like to make public comment?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers at this time.
Thank you so much. So members, with that, that is the end of our hearing for today. And for Ways members, we will have a behind the bar before floor today for bill introduction. With that, we are adjourned.